Truly remarkable improvement by the Utah Jazz in their last 2 ball games, but no dividend to speak of.
No reward for the victory of a victory. It's all next on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. Today, we will look over the weekend as a whole of the truly remarkable improvement the Jazz have made, how different a team they look after a few days of practice, and the work that Will Hardy and his staff have put into the team. We will look at last night's matchup. The Jazz have a terrible half-court offensive game and survive. The resiliency, the fight, the effort is back. Ochai Agbaji has a sick defensive game last night, showing a lot of his growth. Roles are allowing guys to prosper. We'll look at all that, and Kevin Durant's just totally ridiculous. That's all coming up on today's show. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, as well as on YouTube. Our YouTube question of the day: is Kevin Durant the best offensive player in the NBA right now? That's also available for you on Twitter. Send it to me at DLock09 or comment and let me know your thoughts on that. To the everydayers, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. A bunch of you said hi to me in the arena over the last few days. Like that as well. And if you're in LA on Tuesday, please give me a little hello as well. It's great to see the everydayers each and every day. Thanks so much for tuning in to the show. What an incredible weekend of NBA. Jazz do go 0-2, and I could not agree more with Will Hardy that he just wanted the win for those guys so badly. They just have clearly worked amazingly hard, detailed, focused. That's just a totally different team than what we've seen. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code all lowercase Locked On NBA for your first deposit match up to $100. Really amazing performance by the team. I think Phoenix is really good. I think they're now 12-1 when both Durant and Booker play over the last 2 years. Their offense churns at about a 127. Durant's at peak health right now, playing a stunning 35 minutes a night, more last night, obviously, because of the overtime. And, when they're playing a Durant, Devin Booker 2-man game on the left side of the floor with an open corner, if we talked about on the postcast and talked a lot about on the broadcast, like what do you do? And the Jazz tried and rotated out of it and tried to do the best they could. Eric Gordon hit 2 big threes. Grayson hit threes. Those are probably the guys you want to have, make shots, and they got them. So if you're, an end result, obviously is a bummer, but I just thought overall, if you look at the team, the ball movement's better than it used to be. The togetherness is better than it's been all year. And the togetherness is great because this is a group that I talked about that this just happened. There's nothing wrong with this. It's a conversation a lot of commentators don't talk about. And so I don't want to, I don't, and I'm hoping it's not getting misinterpreted, but there's just was not natural cohesion in this group. When you look down the roster and you look at a guy and you're like, well, who does he hang out with? There isn't a natural, there's kind of, everyone's in a little bit different spot in their life. Keontae and Talon probably over the year will get along really great. They're both super dudes. And then, but one's 20 and the other's 23 with a kid. There's been a league for 4 years. They'll get there, right? I think they'll get there as the year goes on. And so the Jazz did a lot of not forced as in a bad way, but events to put guys together, team dinners, Hawaii, things like that. I don't think this is something the group was totally unaware of. But at some point, you actually have to get into a task together. You can do all those other things, but you have to get into a task together. Well, it's really clear the coaching staff dug in. They dug in with the coaching staff, and they got a great deal better. Their execution was better. Their togetherness is better. Their offensive movement is better. There just so many things taking place on this team are improved from what they were from what we watched before. Like I cannot tell you how different a team it is to watch than the one we watched in Chicago or even watched in Indiana, the transformation. Now, some of it's Keontae, some of it's Ochai Agbaji in the starting lineup. When Walker comes back, I think it'll follow through. I mean, certainly Keontae with another 11 assists last night has helped a tremendous amount, and they're looking to Keontae and respecting him, and he's trying to lead them to the best of his ability. So we're really seeing all of it happen and come together. But there's just also just another element, like THT and Sexton were both brilliant last night. And I think they're kind of understanding what they're supposed to do in their roles. And I mean, Taylor was great. 25 points last night, hit 4 of 10 on 3. I think his catch and shoots last night, he was 4 for 6 or something like that. I think he's awfully close to 40% on catch and shoot threes so far this year, which is up from 30% last year. I mean, he's really done a masterful job of working on his skills and getting better. And Colin just brings such unbridled juice. And I think they're both figuring out how it is that they can bring that juice. Colin hit the pull-up 3 and then another one in the quarter. He'd only had one off the bounce 3 all season long, and was able to, and hit 2 big ones. But they're symbolic to me that they're playing with a little bit more understanding and freedom of getting what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to play, which I think is great. Taylor, by the way, is 41% now on catch and shoot threes this year. He was 30% last year. That's big time off-season work being put in by Taylor, and we're seeing dividends for it. So really, I just thought overall from a coaching staff standpoint, you just look down at there was a concept of what they were doing defensively. It didn't come out great, but that's just because Durant and Booker are great. The offense, we saw some of the transition, some things they've been working on in practice every day. We finally saw them happen, like, getting on both sides of the floor really quickly in transition. Last night, they lived by transition. The half-court offense last night was not good. We'll touch on that in a second. And yet they stayed and they showed a resiliency and a fight that kind of was the signature of last year's team throughout what they were doing. The turnovers are way down, right? I mean, the turnovers were kind of absurd there for a while, and the rate of turnovers and how they were happening and what the turnovers were. They weren't. I don't really usually care about turnovers because, in my opinion, usually what you see is teams with high turnover rates are the best offensive teams in the league, and it's usually because of the fact they turn it over a lot because they're pushing. Like right now, Dallas is the second highest rate turnover team in the league. They're the 10th best offense. Philly's the 3rd highest turnover team. They're the 2nd ranked offense. Boston's the 5th highest ranked. Oh no, actually it's the opposite. Sorry, I pushed the button the wrong way. Usually you look at like Orlando's high on turnovers. They're the 9th best offense. Clippers are high in turnovers. They're the 12th best offense. Minnesota's the 4th best offense. Usually you have some teams that when they're high in turnovers, they're creating opportunities for people. We weren't doing that. We're just turning it over. Well, that has nicely calmed down. I mean, that's Keontae and guys having a role, and Ochai being a ball mover and not having to shoot. And that's the rightful order of the basketball universe we talked about last week for the everydayers. I mean, last night wasn't great. We were back up at 16%, but the night before at 8%. The night before that, we were 12% for our turnover rates. So you're just seeing incredible growth in that level. So, I mean, to wrap it up, better ball movement, better execution of what Will Hardy wants and how they're going to play the game, better taking care of the ball, getting out in transition at a much higher rate. We've been out in transition 16% of the time or more in 4 of our last 5 games. We'd only done that in 2 of the previous 9. Okay, that's how Will wants to play. And then I think we saw defensively some real understanding of like, okay, we're trying to force to help. We're trying to force certain ways on the pick and roll. Hey, there was a play where they tried to execute it perfectly, and Kevin Durant crosses over and brings it back to the right side, and he can't, goes away from the help. That's just because Kevin Durant's great and Devin Booker's great. Like at some point, you're playing other guys that are really, really good. And last night was the case. I mean, that Phoenix team may win it. And we just play, and the Jazz played with them every step of the way. And it's a bummer that, I thought Will's comment coming out of the presser of just, I wanted these guys to get the win. I really, really wanted these guys to get the win, that they deserved it. That's his like level of saying, hey, they busted last night for me. And they've worked this last 2 days of practice in each of these, between these games at a high level. And I wanted them rewarded for it. That's a great sign. I mean, that is a truly great sign. of the growth of this of what Will's building and where they're going. Because there were some let's not kid ourselves. They opened the year getting blown out in like 4 of the first games. There were some moments that didn't feel right. And the last 2 nights against maybe the best team in the Western Conference, that felt right. So super cool to see that growth. Too bad for the guys that they don't get a win. For us, too bad we didn't get a win as fans. But if you didn't enjoy those two, wow, that was awesome. By the way, Holly Rowe does the Front Row podcast, and she did a 50-minute sit down with Will Hardy, actually with Ryan Smith. Had some great stuff about his journey to Korea and how it changed his life, and super good stuff. That the next edition is with Will Hardy, and that comes out Tuesday exclusively on Jazz Plus. All right, we're just getting started. We'll dig into last night. Ochai Agbaji had an unbelievable defensive game, and we'll dig into some of that. We'll talk a little bit how they survived despite having a really bad half-court game, and what Phoenix's primary offensive set was that was so difficult for the Jazz to handle. So we'll look at all that as we continue on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also in Logan. The Murdochs have been in Utah for over 85 years, done amazing things, obviously, in Utah in that time, and have the Chevy Americana, the truck that is the Silverado, the 1500 crew cab is like, it's just the grandiose truck of all trucks, plus the little Colorado that can zip you around and get you going. Obviously, the SUVs are amazing. The Tahoe and the Suburban are Chevy signatures, but now with the Blazer and the Trailblazer, the lineup is complete top to bottom with little tracks, the Equinox and the Traverse. Go check them all out at Murdoch Hyundai, Murdoch Chevy. You get up to $7,000 off in the season of giving on a Silverado truck right now on the 1500 crew cab custom 2023. You can get up to $7,000 off. That's all at Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. If you're going to head over, feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so that we can get you an opportunity to have a VIP meeting and set up as an everyday, or should be, from Locked on Jazz. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy game out there for you. Great deal of fun for everyone involved each and every day. You pick whether you think someone's going to get more or less assists, points, whatever it might be, and you end up with great chance to win. Plus, with the promo code Locked On right now, or Locked On, let me check and make sure I have the promo code right, because the other day I think I screwed it up. You get $100. Locked On NBA, you get a first deposit match up to $100. That's right. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the promo code LockedOnNBA and for a free deposit match up to $100. It's a great deal of fun. It is not against the Sharks or the best there is. You're just picking Monday Night Football. Tonight's an incredible matchup, so feel free to go get involved in that. And you're picking to see more or less on 2 to 6 player star projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's all Prize Picks, #1 daily fantasy sports game. Those were 2 sick games. Sick games. By the way, thank you very much to everybody who has tuned in to Locked On Sports today. That is our new channel that is the first ever 24/7 sports stream on YouTube. Go check it out, Locked On Sports Today. Subscribe. By the way, if you can hit the bell button on ours every time we premiere, you'll know right away when we start. So it'd be great if you can do that. So go check it out. Go to Locked On Sports Today. I would love your thoughts at dlock09@gmail.com. What do you like about it? Do you watch television in the background? Is this something that kind of works for you in that way, the way ESPN does, without having someone screaming and yelling at you the whole time? I love my guy, but he does. He yells at us the whole time. So let me know. I'd love your thoughts on Locked On Sports Today. What you like, what would change, what would be better, things like that. We're working on various things. We got some really exciting things for the first quarter of 2024. All right. So our half-court offense last night was terrible. In fact, it was one of the second worst half-court offense we've had all year long. The only other game was in Minnesota but we lost that game 123-95. So you're talking about growth. Like, we had a bad half-court game. Finally, by the end, we got to 0.8. But if you go quarter by quarter, it was brutal. But you want effort and resiliency? How about grabbing 48% of your misses? Last night, the Jazz grabbed 48% of their misses as offensive rebounds. I think it's about the highest rate of any team all year long. Maybe one or two teams has had a single day higher. I really couldn't find it last night. I was trying to find it. So, I mean, that's incredible. And then the other one is we got out and ran. And this is where Will has really worked on the guys. And in fact, the other day at practice, I was literally talking to Will and I was like, what do you do about the fact that like you're sitting here in practice and there's a part of their offense in transition that they want to execute. And it's like, I'm watching the film and it's like wide open there for them. And they don't do it. And so I pulled Will aside. I was like, what do you do about this? Like, do you lose it in practice? Like, what do you do? And he was like, you know what? You just practice it every day. You mention it in every timeout. You show it in every film session. And eventually it starts to happen. And the patience that he is showing, because it did start to happen. And their transition was great. Not only were they in transition a lot, 17% of the time, which is about 70th percentile in the league, but they were very good in transition. It was our best transition game of the year, 1.55 points per transition. Last night was the single best transition game of the year. So the Jazz survived last night, very Memphis Grizzlies-esque actually, off offensive rebounding and transition on a night where the half-court offense wasn't good. That's a huge step because this is a team that's pretty good offensively, good shooting team. Didn't have the shooting. Nobody had the shooting last night for most of the night until the Suns finally got it going. And we'll touch on that here in a second. But for them to be able to not have the three-point shooting going, not to have the catch and shoot game going, and then be able to still stay in the game with just resilience, effort. Like those are two effort. Offensive rebounds and transition are just pure effort. Getting out and running off anything stops and mistakes, and then just powering them on the glass. It was interesting. In the first half, they had 11 offensive rebounds and gave up 11 fast break points. That's good math, by the way. If you think about it, the Jazz got off offensive rebounds last night. Here, we'll do a little fun math here for a second if you're wondering on how this works. So on offensive rebounds last night, the Jazz scored. It looked like they scored about 1.05 points per, which is low on every play. But if you think about it, it's a zero, right? Like you've just already committed a zero. And so every time you get an offensive rebound, the Jazz got an extra point that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Last night, the night before, they were 1.83 points, and we're actually not great on putbacks according to Clean the Glass. Our efficiency has not been as good on that, so it'll be interesting to see if we can up that up a little bit, or find a way to. I don't know how you get better at that. That's not something we've generally solved as of yet. And I don't know, like, we're gonna get better at putbacks. Like, yeah, okay. I think it's just kicking out and making shots, or maybe it's finding better shots off of those transitions. I don't really have a good answer for you on like what that is. So if you think about the math on this, you're allowing about 1.1 points in half court anyway. So if someone goes and gets a fast break on you and they're better about 1.4, 1.5 in transition, you're giving up 0.3 points for the risk, which means that every time you get an offensive rebound and get a point, they have to get 3 transition opportunities to match the value of that offensive rebound. That's why analytically, everyone's gone away from the Doc Rivers, Greg Popovich idea that you don't get offensive rebounds. Realized it analytically isn't true. It's literally close to a 3-to-1 ratio that for every transition, for every offensive rebound, you got to get 3 transitions to match what you had on the other side. So the big thing is it's a zero, right? Like the shot's missed already. So you're getting a zero at that moment in time. And if you can go grab it and you get an extra point, that's a big deal. That's how we stayed in the game last night. Last night, the defense was really interesting. And some of this could just be shot making, but there's a little more to it. So in the first quarter of the defense, Phoenix, I think, will be the best offense. Phoenix or Dallas is probably going to finish the year as the best offense in the NBA. Maybe Sacramento again. They should not dismiss them. They're rolling with De'Aaron Fox back. They had a 120 offensive rating last year, which was the best offense of anyone in the NBA. Phoenix is at a 120.7 right now. That's kind of the best there is. Phoenix is a 115.9. And that's without their guys. With Booker and Durant together, they're a 126 when the two of them are on the floor together. So those are to give you context. So quarter one, the Suns were at 115, which is right on their average. So the Jazz, who are 27th in league defensively, for us to be at average, that's really good, right? We're 28th actually now. So that's really good. Second quarter was 119.2. Not as good, but not crazy. Like still kind of in against one of the better teams, kind of at our average. That's a good quarter for us. Third quarter, the defensive rating was a 92.3. That's brilliant. For 6 turnovers in that third quarter. They missed some shots, but the Jazz defense was exquisite in the third quarter. Again, effort, resiliency, all these things. Third quarter up against them, all the things we want to see out of this team taking place, and just great improvement. In the fourth quarter and the overtime, they couldn't hold it. Some of it's shot making, but also in 22 minutes, we forced one turnover. We went from forcing 6 turnovers in 12 minutes to the third quarter to 1 turnover in 22 minutes. Now, they slow this thing down and run the same play time and time again. And it obviously gets hard, but you're also forcing skip passes on double teams. You'd like to get some turnovers. And the Suns really shot it. Their offensive rating was a 148 in the fourth quarter, and it was a 147 in overtime. Almost 1.5 points every time they crossed half court. And they really shot it well. They hit 9 of their final 19 from 3. They hit 19 of their final 37 shots. 19 of 37 from the field. You can do the math on that. It's a little over 50%. And 9 over 19 is a little under 50% from 3. So that's pretty bona fide. And then they have great three-point shooting. But the one turnover forced in the final 22 minutes. Now, the Suns ran the same play just about every single time. They went to the far left side of the floor. We talked about this on Postcast. So for the everydayers, thank you for sticking with us. And they clear the corner. So there's no help to come from that corner. So it's clear side. And I called it on the play-by-play last night. I was calling it clear side every single time. There's no help on that side. So there's the 3 other guys are on the far side of the floor. So you're going to have to come the whole width of an NBA court to come help. Booker and Durant would kind of play their little 2-man game at the top. They'd get Keontae switched onto Durant, lob it into Durant mid-post. Jazz would bring a double, but from a long way away. Durant would skip it over the top to Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon, and Keita Diop was on the floor for a lot of it. Nasir Little for a little. You have to go back and look at who all their fourth quarter minutes were. Nurkic kind of staying out of the lineup in the overtime. And they would skip it over the top, and then the Jazz would have to rotate back and listen to Will Hardy and Lauri Markkanen post-game last night. It sounds as though the rotations weren't perfect. Those are hard rotations, and those are really hard rotations. You're 40 minutes into a game, and the ball's moving fast. I kind of have large sympathy to that, and I think the effort was terrific. Nurkic played most of that. So Nurkic is down in the dunker. Nurkic played most of the second overtime. Bates Diop was in for a play or two, and Nurkic did not play the first overtime, in which Bates Diop was in for the whole time. So just to be accurate. And so they're skipping it over the top. It's well designed. Like it's the 2 of the top 10 best players in the world on one side of the floor, and it's spaced out, and you got a long way to come, and you got to help Keontae because he's 6'4" and a rookie, 6'3" and a rookie on a 7-foot Durant. And they just execute it super well. I mean, you just have to give them a lot of credit. And the Jazz tried to get out of it, but once they got into that, it's hard to get the turnovers. It's hard to get them to make mistakes. And then Eric Gordon's a veteran and Grayson Allen's really good. So those guys made just a ton of plays late in the game. Ochai Agbaji was brilliant defensively, and Kevin Durant's really good as well. Those are the things we still have coming up for you on today's program. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the number 1 sports book in America. It is the official sports book of Locked On. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in the action than now. Spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to kick off the holiday season. And you can bet on and have a little fun with the NBA and the in-season tournament if you would like to. The odds on who's going to win the in-season tournament, win each group. Lakers obviously heavily favored now in Group A that the Jazz are in. Minnesota's kind of the upstart pick in the NBA right now, other than the kind of expected picks of Boston and all the others. If you want to jump aboard and get involved with any of the other NBA, plus a whole night of action tonight. Here's the latest on the in-season tournament odds. Boston is plus 390. Milwaukee's plus 440. Lakers are plus 550. Denver's plus 800. Minnesota plus 950. And then Indiana plus 1,600 along the way. And the NBA in-season MVP tournament, Jason Tatum plus 500. LeBron plus 700. Jokic plus 800, Antetokounmpo plus 850, Anthony Edwards plus 1,000, and Dame Lillard plus 1,200. That's all at the FanDuel Sportsbook, FanDuel.com/locked on. Thanks so very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. At the end of the show, we will send you over to Locked On Sports today. As I mentioned, feel free to email me, dlock09. How do you watch it? Do you like it? What are you watching it on? Super curious if you checked out Locked On Sports today. What would make it a better experience for you? All right, let's talk about Ochai Agbaji's defense last night, and I've got some notes for you down on the bottom if you're watching on YouTube. Ochai last night guarded Kevin Durant for 33 possessions, or 52% of the time that Ochai was on the floor, he was guarding Durant, which is a big change because the other night he guarded him for just 21 possessions. So the Jazz made a change. Durant in the game on Friday night against Lauri Markkanen went 9 for 12 from the field, and 4 for 4 from three. So he had him, kind of had his number a little bit. Last night he went 4 of 7 on Lauri and 1 of 2. So you saw a pretty big change. So the first game, Ochai guarded Durant for 13 possessions, 23% of the time. Last night he guarded him 33 possessions and 52% of the time. And Durant went 3 for 8 and 0 for 2 from 3 with guarded by Ochai. What was interesting is in with other possessions, when he was not on Durant, 22% of the time he was on Booker. So he spent 75% of his time on either Durant or Devin Booker last night. Pretty awesome. He only took one offensive shot. We can dig into that a little bit. But Devin Booker, which is pretty much the exact same amount he guarded Devin Booker the night before. So the night before, he guarded Devin Booker 15 possessions or Friday night, and Durant 13. This time he guarded Durant 33 and Devin Booker 15. Pretty amazing. Devin Booker goes 0 for 6 and 0 for 3 when guarded by Ochai Agbaji last night. So Durant and Booker were combined 3 of 14 and 0 of 5 from 3 when guarded by Ochai Agbaji last night. That's pretty amazing. That's also where we're just a lot better. We actually have a defensive player on the floor. This kind of goes back to when I did the lineups to start the year and I had Ochai Agbaji like playing 48 minutes. Like I had him starting because he had to defend, and then I had him backing up Lauri, and then I had and then I looked and he never was off the floor. So 48 possessions he defended those guys last night, and he allowed them to go 3 of 14 from the field and 0 of 5 from 3. That's pretty great. The night before, he guarded them for a combined 28 possessions, so far fewer. And they were 4 of 8 from field and 2 of 3 from 3. So it goes back to one of the more interesting comments Quinn Snyder said a few years back about the way that Royce O'Neal in his second year as a defensive stopper was so much better because he actually understood the defensive players the same way an offensive player with the second year as being kind of the main guy learns how to adapt. And it's not something at the time I'd ever thought of. Here's Ochai 2 nights later. And I thought that was maybe the most impressive thing by the Jazz is like you saw a team execute a game plan, improve, and make changes from what they were able to do in the previous matchups. And so, you don't usually get to do that. Will Hardy talked about it in the pregame. Usually you play a team, you look at how you want to adjust, and then you go play 8 games, you come back and play them. You have to remember that and bring it back. This time the Jazz literally got to play a team, practice, work on those and they really did it well. They really, really did it well. They didn't get the win because the Slim Reaper 35 Durantula is just ridiculous. I mean, he's really, really just absolutely great. It's a legitimate question that we've asked on our YouTube question today of whether Kevin Durant is the best offensive player in the game. Steph Curry, Luka Doncic to me are the other two. Nikola Jokic is the fourth in that group. I mean, they're all just different. Like those are the elite offensive players in the game. And it's hard to imagine a player being better offensively than Kevin Durant or more potent or more difficult to guard. And I thought the Jazz tried to speed him up, tried to do what they could with him, but he's just that great. And at some point when you have these matchups and you're playing these games and you're trying, and this is what it is. Like the league sometimes gets super simple. And in this case, it's that Kevin Durant can go score 39 points on 27 shot attempts last night and score 38 on 22 the night before that. While his willingness to pass is incredible. Earlier this year, I watched him. I thought he was obnoxious in the fourth quarter. But last night, his willingness to pass, he ends up with 10 assists last night. He's just great. I mean, it's actually a pleasure to watch, right? Like, there is a level where you just kind of a little bit tip your hat and say, okay, like, if you're going to play the game right and be that good. I mean, the fourth quarter the other night, he was 3 of 5 from the field with 4 assists. So he directly scored 7 of their 12 field goals. Then you go to overtime. In the 2 overtimes, he's 3 of 5 from the field with 1 assist. So he directly results in 4 of their 7 field goals. Like, it's pretty, you can't, like, they get the switch, you got to double. Now you're scrambling. He's willing to pass out of it. And the only shot I thought he missed actually was the last play of the game where he didn't get the offensive rebound. I haven't talked about the last play and the foul call because I thought the officials were terrible last night. Or I thought Jonathan Sterling and Ashley Moyer-Gilch were not very good last night. I thought they just didn't have a feel for the game. I thought they were slow all night long. On that call, they probably were right. On the Lowry marking the third foul in the second quarter when Kevin Durant elbows him in the stomach and Lowry has to sit down for 3 minutes, they weren't right. And that was his big game. That was a bigger impact on the game than the final call. So that's probably where, if you want me to talk about the officials, that's where I would be outraged. I actually thought that call was brutal. Like, Lowry's rolling. He's 6 of 8. He's got 12 points in the quarter. And he has to sit down because of an imaginary stupid foul that didn't exist. So, yeah, I mean, we can go recency bias and argue the last one, which I think is silly to argue. They looked at a replay and they made the call. But that one's the one they missed. I mean, they just were slow. They were just bad all night, I thought. I haven't thought they've been bad all year, actually. It's first night in 13 games or 14 games I've talked about the officials on the air. I thought the crew was bad last night. I could be wrong. I'm sure somebody in the NBA could tell me that. That is Locked On Jazz today. Thank you very much for being a part of the show, being part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now we'll send you over to Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national 24/7 stream on YouTube.